There are a lot of different factors that can change the chromosome structure. There are certain things like environmental factors like radiation, organic chemicals, viruses. Those can all cause changes to the chromosome. They can cause that chromosome to break, and when it's reformed, mistakes can happen. Ordinarily, when breaks occur, the two broken ends will reunite, but sometimes those ends don't rejoin in the same way as they did before. We make mistakes when trying to repair the problem. Changes in chromosomal structure can include things like deletions, duplications, inversions, translocations of those chromosome segments. So we'll talk about each one of those, starting with a deletion. A deletion is when a part of the chromosome breaks off. Even when only one member of a pair of chromosomes is affected, the deletion frequently causes abnormalities in the rest of the body. So here's an example of a deletion. In this case, a portion broke off and it just wasn't reunited. It wasn't brought back in, it wasn't reunited or brought back on. So this can cause a variety of syndromes like Williams syndrome or Cri-du-Chat. We'll talk about those in just a moment. Duplications occur when we are replicating the chromosome. One section might accidentally be repeated. So here we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Here we have A, B, C, D, E, D, E, F, G. So one section just got repeated. This is when we just have the presence of a chromal segment more than once. And it can cause all kinds of interesting complications. An inversion is when we have a portion that broke off, and when we went to repair it, the piece was actually inserted upside down. It can happen. So in this case, the correct order was A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but in this case, when we reinserted it, we ended up with A, B, D, C, E, F, G. So that's possible. Most do not present problems because all the genes are still present. So inversions can happen. They don't frequently cause issues because the genes are still there. We still have D and C. They're just maybe not in the correct order. Translocations is when we move a segment of a chromosome to another non-homologous chromosome. So here we have two completely separate chromosomes, and what happened is we broke a small portion off, and when we went to repair them, we didn't attach them in the right order. It's kind of like, I don't know, if you guys ever did this when you were younger, but when we used to play with our markers, we would sometimes mismatch the caps. So you put the red cap on the blue marker, you put the blue cap on the red marker. It happens. In about 5% of cases when this occurs, it occurs typically between chromosome 21 and 14, and it tends to cause Down syndrome when it does occur. So we're going to focus on just a few of those chromosomes, a few of those chromosomal changes in structure. So deletion syndromes would be things like Williams syndrome. This is when chromosome 7 loses a tiny portion off the end. This is going to result in a turned up nose, wide mouth, small chin, large ears. There tends to be very poor academic skills, but excellent verbal and musical abilities. And the reason for this is that the gene for elastin is missing. So this is going to cause this is going to greatly affect the cardiovascular system. It can cause the skin to age prematurely without the presence of that elastin, and it can cause some other issues as well. The cat's cry syndrome, or Cri-du-Chat, if that's how that's pronounced, I'm very sorry, I don't speak French. But this syndrome is caused by a deletion in chromosome 5. So again, we're just missing a small end piece. This tends to result in a small head, intellectual disabilities, and facial abnormalities. It also results in an abnormal development of a glottis and larynx. So especially in small children, when they cry, it tends to sound like a cat mewing. So that's where it gets the name from. There are also translocation syndromes. When an individual inherits both translocated chromosomes, they could have the normal amount of genetic material, so they're perfectly healthy. So if we end up with an individual who has a red cap on a blue marker and a blue cap on a red marker, usually we're not going to have any issues because all of those genes are still present. They're in the wrong location, but they're there. Unless the chromosome exchange broke an allele into two pieces, we're going to see the individual is okay. The problem occurs when the individual with the translocation has offspring. When they pass on those chromosomes to their offspring, somebody might inherit only one of those copies, and they're going to have only one copy of certain alleles and 3 copies of the other alleles. So we could see significant problems when you go to inherit copies of those genes. An example of this would be Largall syndrome. This is a translocation between chromosomes 2 and 20. We could see a combination of heart defects called the tetralogy of Fallot. You may also see clubbing of the fingers. Translocations may also result in cancer due to abnormalities as they are being passed down from one generation to the next. So that's just a few. For your question on your study guide, I ask you to choose one of those disorders and describe them. You don't have to pick one from your textbook. Any genetic disorder that arises from a change in either chromosome number or structure is perfectly acceptable. I will accept any of those. But you must tell me what is the change in chromosome structure. What is the genetic disorder? Is there a duplication or a missing of a particular chromosome? Is there a duplication, translocation, inversion of a particular gene? So you need to know what is the genetic cause, and then what are the signs and symptoms associated. All right, so you should be able to explain what causes an individual to have an abnormal number of chromosomes, be familiar with non-disjunction, when and how it can occur. You should be able to also distinguish between a translocation and inversion. We did talk about Down syndrome, we talked about Turner and Jacob syndrome, but I am going to ask that you specifically pick one to study with, know, and be familiar with for the cases of our unit quiz. All right, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know.